Hi, I'm Lucy.
And I'm Berno.
And we're married, which we thought we should clarify.
Yeah, because we're sat a bit close here. This is not 2 meters distance, is it? So in COVID season, we're allowed to be together.
A little bit creepy, but anyway. We'll move on. So when we're washing up and tidying up, we often have sort of deep conversations about different things. And one of the things that's come up is this sort of tension between self-love and selfless love, and striking a balance between the two.
Yeah, because at church, we hear quite a lot about Jesus and how he gave his life up for us, and also how we have to be living sacrifices and we have to take up our cross, and we have to love our neighbor like ourselves. And so all these things you can hear, especially growing up, when you hear that. I think particularly for your context, that had a huge impression on you, but it actually didn't do you that much good necessarily. So it's about striking that balance. But why, and self-love, this is something you've seen a lot on social media.
Yeah. So I think recently there's been a lot more awareness about mental health, and there's been a lot more sort of on social media and just generally about self-love and taking care of yourself, which isn't something which is really talked about in the church. And so it feels like there's this conflict between the two, and we wanted to sort of talk about that and discuss it and see what other people's thoughts are on it and experiences are as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think conflict, I don't know, have you felt that there's conflict between the two?
I have, but then that's my experience.
Yeah, that's your experience. And that's the thing. I think we'll all have slightly different experiences. So we're kind of sharing out of our experience, but we also realize that that's not the whole truth. Like we all have very different approaches to this and understandings. And so, so that's kind of where we're coming from. So this is a conversation really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sharing our thoughts. And so we would love to know what other people think and they have to say on it as well.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that you sort of take what we say and really think about it in terms of your context, because I think that's really important in terms of, having wisdom.
Yeah, because it's easy for us to live by principles. We have principles that we live by, and that's kind of our rules for life. But sometimes our principles can be in conflict with each other. And depending on the situation that comes up, and you think, okay, but I need to do this because this is the principle that I live by. But actually the situation doesn't necessarily require that. And so that's where you have to be quite smart, because there's a place for self-care and there's a place for this selfless love and giving that. And so that is what we want to do, is how to strike that balance.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of thought of 4 areas, which is the things we talk about a lot over the washing up bowl. So what are those 4 areas?
So the first one is self-awareness. And we wanted to sort of go into that a bit more and explore what that is. Then there's boundaries. It fell down. Yeah, so the second one is boundaries, and the different sort of areas sort of tie into each other. So
because if you're aware of yourself and your limitations, then you can know what boundaries to set, can't you?
Yeah. And again, that's something that's not really talked about at church. So we wanted to sort of dig into that a little bit more. And then the third one is communication. So being able to communicate those boundaries, but also communication within the church in terms of, self-love, boundaries, and...
Well, the balance. It's that balance between self-love and selfless love.
Yes.
Because normally selfless love is, I think, the one that's emphasized.
Yes.
And not much is said about self-love.
No. And then the fourth one is motives. So, looking at your motivation for why we do certain things.
Because a lot of the time we can do stuff out of guilt, can't we?
Yeah. Which I guess is because often being selfless is talked about, and if we're not being selfless, we feel a bit guilty.
Whereas again, in the Bible it says God loves a cheerful giver.
Yeah.
And so if you're giving out of guilt, what is your giving? Is that really that good because of your motives? So that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting to sort of look at these topics areas in a bit more detail. So if that's something that interests you, if what we're talking about is maybe something you've been thinking about, then please watch the rest of the videos and let us know what you think, because it'd be great to hear what your experience is and what your thoughts are.
Definitely. Yeah. Great.
Okay.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.